Wind slices across the valley, drifting needles of ice scraping Yura's face. And evening hasn't even settled. He knows there's no running back to the village. The frozen wind is dropping toward -40, fast enough to steal the feeling from his hands. And in that panic, a father's warning returns like a heartbeat. When the wind swallows the sky, you go into the earth. Out here, your thermostat drops a few degrees, and you get annoyed. He loses 2 degrees, and he loses his fingers. This is the moment. Build a shelter the right way, or watch his bloodline end beneath the snow crust. But the Komi, the Nenets, the Evenki, all survived storms like this, carving dugout hollows and earth walls that even blizzards couldn't break. They built with soil, and tonight Yura must repeat their 5 steps before darkness wins. So watch what he does next, step by step, because this is how you build a shelter that a blizzard can't break. The wind hits first, not a gentle warning, but a frozen blade sliding across the whitened horizon, pushing drifting needles of ice through the air like a handful of broken glass. Yura turns his face away, squinting into the blur, trying to read the wind the way his father once did. In Siberia, the wind doesn't just test your shelter, it tests your judgment. He listens. He watches the snow move sideways, searching for that one place where the storm hesitates. Older hunters called it the wind shadow, a small mercy behind a low rise of earth or a knot of stubborn Siberian pine. Miss that spot by a few steps, and the frozen wind cuts straight through your shelter like it has a personal grudge. Find it, and the earth begins to protect you. Your thermostat drops a few degrees, and you feel annoyed. Out here, losing just 2 degrees means losing your fingers. That's the math Yura lives with. He studies the ground again. There, a soft dip in the landscape where the sound of the storm dulls just a little, like someone turned the world down half a notch. A father's warning echoes in the back of his mind, the kind of warning meant not for comfort, but for survival. When the wind swallows the sky, you go into the earth. So he plants the shovel. The frostbite air stings his knuckles. His breath spills out in heavy clouds. The metal scrapes against the first crust of snow, then bites into soil hardened by months of cold. Inch by inch, he breaks through the snow crust in packed earth, carving out the start of a dugout hollow, just as ancient hands once did. Archaeologists studying Komi winter camps still find these depressions, shallow bowls carved exactly like this, dropping anywhere from half a meter to 1.5 meters. Perfectly shaped for survival, perfectly shaped for men who needed the earth more than the earth needed them. Yura widens the hollow, shaping it into a shallow bowl so the walls won't collapse under the storm's weight. The soil smells cold, almost metallic, but it holds a buried warmth deep inside it, a warmth that only rises when a man asks the land for help. He digs until the wind above changes tone, turning sharper, angrier, but no longer hitting him with its full force. The wind shadow is working. The earth is beginning to hold him. And now the payoff comes fast, like the first breath after panic. The wind is blocked. The warmth stays in. He begins to survive. For a moment, there's a quiet pride in him, the kind of pride every Komi son feels when he follows the old ways correctly, when he earns the right to face the storm and still come home alive. The ground has opened its arms for him just as it did for his ancestors. But a dugout hollow is only the beginning. The sky is dimming, the air is tightening, and the storm is nowhere near finished. If Yura wants to see morning, he'll need more than a hole in the earth. He'll need to build the kind of shelter the blizzard itself respects. The wind grows meaner now. It hits the dugout hollow with drifting needles of ice, each one stinging like a warning from a world that does not care whether a young hunter lives to see sunrise. Yura wipes his face with the back of his glove, taking one long breath and letting it roll out slow into the frozen wind. This is the moment the old men always spoke of. A hole in the ground is not enough. Not in Siberia. He looks around for timber-short, stubborn logs half buried under compressed drift snow, the kind of wood that survives only because it learned how to bow without breaking. That same lesson applies to men out here. Bend when you must. Stand when you can. If Ura hesitates, the storm will bury him alive. Wet, heavy snow is the silent killer of the taiga. It presses down with the weight of a small car. Without a log frame, the earth walls he carved will collapse inward, turning the dugout into a trap, not a shelter. Your jacket gets wet and you curse the weather. He makes one mistake here and the blizzard writes his name in the snow, so he starts building. He drags the logs into place, hands raw from frostbite air breath, coming in thick white clouds. Then he sets the first two pieces into an A shape, the old Comey method, the same one Nenet's hunters used, the same one archaeologists kept finding in winter camps across the Kievan Rus frontier. These weren't grand structures, they were low, they were humble, but they held the sky back. He uses notching instead of nails, locking each connection with the confidence of ancient hands, wood biting into wood, tight enough that even the wind shear can't pry it loose. Each thud of the log feels like a heartbeat, steady, calm, stubborn. Siberian men didn't build tall, they built strong. He lowers the roofline just as the elders taught. A low ceiling means the storm can't grab it and tear it away. A low ceiling also traps the buried warmth rising from the ground heat. Ura checks every joint twice, then 3 times, imagining the weight of the snow crust that will settle on top within minutes. Before he closes it off, he carves out a small platform, a sleeping ledge raised just a bit above the cold floor. A simple trick, but brilliant. Warm air rises. Cold air pools low. Even a few inches mean the difference between shivering until dawn or waking up alive. The wind screams above him now, angry that it can't reach him. The logs tremble for a moment, just a moment, and then they settle solid and sure, accepting the weight they were born for. And here, the payoff hits sharp and fast. The frame holds. The roof won't collapse. Ura will not be buried tonight. For a second, he lets himself feel something close to gratitude, a quiet pride that echoes through generations. Strength in Siberia is never loud. It is the strength of a structure built only as high as necessary, and no higher. A strength that exists so a son can come home alive, but the shelter still isn't ready. Not yet. The cold is clever, and it will find any weakness left open. Ura will have to wrap this frame the way his ancestors did, sealing it against a storm older than memory. The storm tightens around him. Branches bend under the frozen wind, bowing low, as if the blizzard were a king passing through. The world dissolves into a whitened horizon so empty and bright it almost hurts to look at. Ura feels the temperature sinking again, slipping between layers of his clothing like a thief in the night. In Siberia, the wind doesn't just punish your shelter, it searches for every mistake you make. The log frame holds, but it is nowhere near warm enough. Wood can brace the storm, yes, but wood alone can't keep the buried warmth in. Gaps between the logs breathe out heat with every gust. The dugout hollow, as it stands now, is just a place to hide, not a place to live. This is where the ancestors did something genius. They built armor. Ura remembers how the old men described it: peat blocks and packed snow laid together like 2 natural shields, one to stop the wet and the wind, the other to trap whatever warmth the earth was willing to share. Archaeologists studying Comey wintering grounds still find peat stacked in a chevron pattern, a simple trick, but brilliant, shedding meltwater instead of letting it soak inward. He gathers what he needs. Peat from the ground, black and dense, smelling faintly of the breathing soil underneath. Drift snow from along the slope compressed into heavy blocks that hold their shape like carved stone. His fingers ache from frostbite air, but he keeps moving. Out here, stillness is how the cold wins. First layer the peat. He presses it onto the log frame 10, maybe 20 centimeters thick, molding it with bare hands until it clings to the wood. The peat layer darkens, the shelter gives it weight, gives it purpose. The storm claws at it, but peat has patience. It was born in cold ground. Second layer, snow. He packs the compressed drift snow against the peat, shaping it like armor plates. Snow in the cities means trouble, but out here, it's insulation. Only people who've lived their whole lives in the cold understand that snow crust can hold warmth the way a stone holds heat from the sun. Yura slides each block into place, sealing every seam, every gap, every place wind shear might try to slip through. He steps back for a moment. Now the shelter looks like part of the land itself, an earth wall thick and white, ready to take the weight of the storm. The old hunters used to say that once the shelter resembles the hill, the blizzard forgets you exist. Yura hopes they were right. The payoff comes quickly, clean and certain. The heat stays in, the wind stays out. The shelter becomes livable. He lets himself breathe, just once. Just long enough to feel a quiet pride settle in his chest, the kind of pride a father hopes to see in a son who listens, who learns, who survives. But as the warmth gathers inside the earth walls, another danger creeps closer, a silent one, a killer faster than cold and harder to notice. Smoke. If Yura doesn't control it, the very fire meant to save him will steal the air from his lungs. The shelter is quiet for the first time tonight. Yura crouches inside the dugout hollow, striking flint over a tiny nest of bark and dry moss. A spark catches, then another, and a thin flame grows soft and trembling as if unsure it belongs in a night this cold. He feeds it slowly, respectfully. A fire is a living thing out here, and every living thing in Siberia demands caution, but the smoke rises fast. It brushes the peat layer overhead, clinging to the roof like black fog, heavy and slow. The earth walls hold heat beautifully, but they also hold air, and that air is turning dangerous. In a place this small, bad air builds up in minutes, smoke, low oxygen, everything your lungs can't handle. You open a window to let smoke out. He opens a vent to stay alive. Yura feels the sting of frostbite air each time he leans toward the flame. He watches the smoke flatten and hesitate, hovering just above his head like a warning. The old men used to say that the dugout tests your judgment the same way the wind does. A mistake with the frame ends your shelter. A mistake with smoke ends you. So he remembers the trick, the one handed down through countless winters. A narrow smoke vent, 5 to 10 centimeters wide, offset from the center so the storm can't steal all his warmth, yet open enough to give the fire a path to breathe. Siberian families survive generations this way, shaping vents so precisely that archaeologists still find vent stones smoke-polished on the inside. He picks up a bone tool and presses it into the ceiling. The peat layer yields first soft and fibrous, smelling faintly of breathing soil. Then he chips through the snow crust above it, hearing each tap echo just a little, a sign the air is waiting on the other side. A faint thread of smoke slips upward, thin as a whisper. The flame brightens. Yura exhales. With a strip of animal hide, he fashions a small flap, a breathing door for the shelter one he can open or close depending on the mood of the storm. It's simple, primitive, and perfect. This is what ancient hands knew a shelter is less about walls and more about breath. He lowers the fire until it burns low and steady, glowing like a buried ember. A small flame warms more than the body, it warms the will. But an oversized flame kills faster than cold. Out here, everything is a balance, a quiet negotiation between survival and surrender. He watches the smoke now. It rises, it curves, it escapes. The payoff lands like a heartbeat. The air clears. The fire breathes. Yura survives the hour. For the first time tonight, he feels a sense of subterranean calm settle around him. The log frame holds. The peat and snow armor hold. And now the fire itself, the most unpredictable element, is under his control. A quiet pride moves through him, the kind meant for sons who build not for comfort, but for the chance to live another day. But the night isn't done testing him. Warmth fades quickly in the taiga, and even the best fire cannot fight forever. If Yura wants to make it to dawn, he'll need something else. Something older than flame. He'll need the ground's hidden warmth. Outside, the blizzard crushes the land with -40 cold. Wind shear howls through the tree line, twisting branches into boughs, dragging drifting needles of ice across the dark. But inside the dugout hollow, deep in the breathing soil, something remarkable happens. A faint, buried warmth rises from the earth walls. It isn't much, but in Siberia, not much is sometimes enough to keep a man alive. Yura studies the flame. It's small, barely more than a glowing ember now, because any larger fire might fill the shelter with smoke again. A fire can betray you, but the ground never does. Still, he knows this warmth won't last unless he shapes the space correctly. The fire could die at any moment. And if it does, he needs a microclimate stable enough to keep him from freezing in his sleep. Ethno-archaeologists studying Komi and Nenet's winter shelters found the same pattern again and again. Even without a fire, a properly built dugout stayed 10 to 25 degrees Celsius warmer than the outside air. A gift from the earth, a pact between humans and soil. But only if the shelter is small enough, sealed enough, and shaped with care. So, he works. He tightens the space first. A dugout must stay small, not cramped, just efficient. The less air volume inside, the slower the heat leaks away. He adjusts the walls, packs snow into every seam, shapes peat where the wind shadow isn't perfect. Every movement is deliberate, guided by ancient hands he never met, but somehow knows. Then he prepares the sleeping ledge. High ground inside a shelter is life insurance. Cold air sinks, warm air floats. Even a few inches can mean the difference between waking up stiff and waking up dead. He smooths the ledge with his palm, feeling the cold grain of soil and the buried warmth beneath. A fragile balance, but a real one. And then he gathers the stones. The heroes of the night, as the elders called them. Stones warmed by the early fire, tucked now along the inner edges of the dugout. They radiate heat, slowly, quietly, reliably, like silent guardians standing watch, long after the flames fade. No modern heater could imitate their patience. He sits for a moment listening. The storm screams above. But down here, a different world exists. A silence older than the storm, a subterranean calm. The payoff arrives soft, subtle, but certain. The wind can't reach him. The cold can't invade. The night becomes survivable. Yura leans back onto the sleeping ledge, letting the ground heat seep into his bones. His breath slows. His shoulders soften. For the first time since the storm began, he feels something he hasn't dared feel all night. A chance. The old saying returns to him warm as any ember. The ground never betrayed those who listened to it. He closes his eyes. The earth rises to protect him. And for the first time in this blizzard, Yura believes he might see morning. Lying on the sleeping ledge, wrapped in the faint, buried warmth rising from the earth walls, Yura finally feels the truth settle over him. A truth older than the storm, older than the dugout itself. Survival in Siberia was never about resisting the cold. No one resists -40. No one resists a sky that turns to iron. You don't fight the winter, you negotiate with it. The old hunters used to say that the wind tests the strong, but the ground shelters the wise. And now, in this quiet hollow of soil and snow, crust, Yura understands what they meant. Every generation before him learned to read the land like scripture, listening for its rhythms, trusting its warmth, shaping their shelters not against nature, but with it. He can feel that lineage now. 1,000 winters, 1,000 hands shaping the same earth. Modern life teaches us to panic when the thermostat drops a few degrees. But here, losing a few degrees isn't an inconvenience, it's an ending. And yet, in this darkness, Yura feels something deeply human flicker inside him. A quiet pride, a masculine tenderness, meant not for comfort, but for survival. The kind of warmth fathers pass down to sons who must return home alive. He breathes slowly, the storm rumbling above him like a sleeping beast. Down here, the world feels smaller, more honest, more ancient. And in that stillness, he realizes something simple. A man survives not by conquering the cold, but by remembering those who showed him how. And as that thought settles in his chest, the night finally begins to loosen its grip. The blizzard softens at last. Snow slides off the peat layer in slow waves like the earth itself is exhaling after holding its breath all night. Yura steps out of the dugout hollow, blinking against the pale morning light. He is alive not because he fought the storm with strength, but because he remembered what the ancestors knew. A dugout shelter isn't a building, it's a pact with the land. Our modern world panics when the room isn't perfectly comfortable. Out here, losing a few degrees means losing your fingers. Out here, losing a few degrees means losing your fingers. But the Komi, the Nenets, the Evenki survived because they understood something simple and ancient. The ground keeps its warmth for those who respect it. And this dugout, it's only one of Siberia's storm-born secrets. Another technique, one shared with the Vikings and the Inuit, waits in the snow for the next traveler brave enough to learn it. If you had to ride out a storm like this, which shelter would you trust more, a Siberian dugout, a Viking longhouse, or an Inuit snowhouse? Tell me in the comments, and we'll let the next story follow your choice.